Hey everybody, how is it going? It's a wonderful evening here in Florida, and I hope it's decent where you're at too. It's no longer sweltering. We're all having a good time, and everybody should be back from San Diego, so they're all ready to get back in the groove of seeing the shows here on the channel. Nice to see Dave and John and Jeff and so many others already ready to go to see this interview with Jeff Harnett. Now we've tried to have Jeff on at least one other time, and we had a delay. So that was a few months ago. So it's good to finally have him on the channel. So I'm gonna get him out of the green room and into the show so we can all get to meet Jeff and hang out with him. So here we go. Hey Jeff, how are you?
Hi, Bill. Thanks. Good. You?
I cannot complain. That's I didn't get to go to San Diego, so I see all the photos. I always feel like going into it, I don't want to go. And then when it's all over and I see everybody had a great time at a show, you realize,
Sure.
I would have had a good time too.
Right.
You ever been out to San Diego?
Twice. 2002 and 2005.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Well,
Nice. Good show though,
yeah. I mean, it's busy. That's the thing, and it's for me, it's an expensive trip, right? I think for most people it is. So that's the trick. And you're East Coast, of course, I imagine, right?
Right. Long Island in New York.
So you go to New York Comic Con every year, or what are the local shows for you?
Yeah. Truthfully, it's not one of my favorite shows because they could get a better guest list. But the artists I speak to, they always say that they don't do a lot for them because they're going to sell out anyway. So I find like Baltimore, Charlotte has a nice guest list because I think they really treat the artists well.
That's true. Yeah, Baltimore. I went there for the first time last year. It was a pretty decent show. And
that's a great show.
Yeah. It's very much a comic-oriented show, which is nice.
Right.
So I see people in the chat there. They're talking about Jeff's Army and you're a king and things. Why is this, Jeff?
We have an art group. They're great guys. You've had a couple of them on. You had Robert Frey, Rich Carrillo. I know that Nick Caratis. Ted Latner and them. So we have an eclectic group. They're high end, the middle of the road. They go on certain things, but the art group is really nice. We meet every month to 2 months. We all bring some artwork. We network. We help each other out. We'll get a pizza and hang out there. So it's friends also. So it started off with art, but now they're all friends and everything, So if anyone is on Long Island and you want to email me to join our group, let me know. But they're nice guys and they have some great artwork, for sure.
Awesome. Do you have like a secret handshake after all these years?
No, it should be though. It should be. They probably call me the king because I probably get more animated than some of them, So that kind of helps.
Well, that's good. So what is it? I think we've seen this question. Dave TV is wanting to know, what about David Donovan? I think that was a question by Dave early on. Do you know what is Dave talking about?
I don't know. I can't even see it. David, they just really like stories about the artists that I've met and everything. So at our meeting, truthfully, besides the artwork, they're really into the stories because I knew a lot of the old time legends, like a lot of them. And, that was a nice thing about the hobby, because I started off as a kid, I collected baseball cards. Then I got into comic books, and back then they didn't have them graded. So you basically would go to a dealer or a store and you would get the best shape that you could get it in. And then I'd stick them inside the Mylar plastic bags. I put them in the boxes. But I realized that over time, it wasn't a hobby you could really share because if a friend came over, I couldn't give them the book because if they creased a page or tore a page, that is a killer. So what happened was I had gotten married to Kathy and we bought a house. We started to fix it up. And we talked about the art and about the comic books, and I decided to sell them thinking I really can share them. We're buying stuff for the house. So I sold them all, and immediately after I sold them, I got that seller's remorse because I didn't have a hobby, and it really depressed me. So what happened was there was a show in Port Chester, and that's upstate in New York. And it's a very small show. And they had a castle that was made out of iron and cement, and it had like a little bit of fame because it was like one of the first ones done like that. But they had these big lawns, and on the lawns you would have some artists sit on the lawn, a couple of fans, and they may be talking or sign a book. So what happened was I went to the show, and Dick Ayers was there, and he had a decent line, and he was drawing on a big pad with a magic marker, and he wasn't charging. And I waited online, and I thought, I'll get a drawing, just to get something. So I waited online, and finally, there's one guy in front of me, and then there's me. And Dick Ayers, which I don't blame him, he might have been drawing for hours for all I know. He goes, I'm really sorry. I'm exhausted. I have to stop. So I figured, okay, it's not his fault. So I start to go off the line, but the guy in front of me really gave him a hard time, like really got mad. So I go over to the guy, and I got him to leave. So I start to walk away, and Dick Ayers goes, I was really afraid that he was going to hurt me. So I said, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So he goes, I want to do a drawing for you. And I said, no, you're tired. But he goes, I'm going to do a drawing for you. So he starts drawing Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos. When he gets to Dino, he goes, do you know why he's Dino? And I'm like, no. So he goes, black hair, good looking. I'm a Dean Martin fan. I said, oh, that's good, So I took the drawing, and I bring it home, and I show it to Kathy, and she goes, that would be a good hobby. Why don't you get drawings? And I thought, gee, if I could meet the guys instead of the name on the comic book, if I could meet them, that would be kind of nice. So what happened was there was a Big Apple show a couple of months later, and I see Dick Ayers there, and he sees me, and then he invites Kathy and I over to his house for breakfast. We go to breakfast there. His wife and him were great. And he told me a quick Steve Ditko story. He goes, a reporter, he came to Marvel, and he wanted me and Steve Ditko to do an interview at a diner. And the next day, and Ditko goes, if you bring a photographer, I'll walk out. So the reporter goes, I'm not going to bring anyone. He goes, I'm telling you, you bring anybody, I'm walking out. So he goes, I promise. So he said the next day, the reporter shows alone, and Dick Ayers shows up. Ditko, he couldn't bring himself to show up, so he never showed. He said he was very reclusive. It's not his fault. He just couldn't bring himself to go. But that's what started me with drawings, because I thought if I framed it, I could have someone over, they could see it. It's not getting hurt, it's protected. And I thought I could see it also and not have to worry about it. And then I also thought with comic books, they're mass produced. So even the expensive ones, most dealers will have even, some of those. And I thought the artwork, it's kind of more singular in nature. The big mistake I made was when I saw the original art, which back then was not that big, it was yellowed. They were white out, the cut corners. And I thought, it's not going to look great framed. Now, I could have gotten great prices. So that was a bad mistake I made. So I thought I was going to get commissions because they were clean. The only good thing I did was I wasn't worried about the guys who were drawing Batman, Spider-Man, or say the X-Men, because when someone starts off on those books, you're usually fairly hot because they're popular books. When they get to that third title, fourth title, a lot of them, they're good artists, but they don't stay in that ilk. So I went back to the legends. So like the Gene Colans, the Jerry Robinsons, Marie Severin, I got to know them all well. And
what was the year that you got the Dick Ayers sketch?
Had to be about early 80s, maybe.
Okay.
Early 80s, I'd say, and, and I really hadn't gotten anything, and I really didn't know much about the drawings either because it was kind of new. I was going for commissions, not that I knew a lot, but I figured if I went to them, they're like the Hall of Famers. So I thought
Mhm.
that would be a good idea, and I was fortunate because I got to really know a lot of them very well. Um, so what happened was, I had gone to a show, and you'll show it, I'm sure. The Michael Zeck. Um, I didn't know him, and I had gone to a show. It was a creation show, I think, with Gary Berman and Alan Malin. That they had the creation cons in like the mid '70s,
Oh yeah,
and like
my
the
first
early
show was a
'80s.
Creation Con. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were big. So I went to a show, and so I saw Michael Zeck, and he's got the painting on an easel, and I just thought that would be like the prettiest thing that I could ever own. So I went up to him and I said, "Is that for sale?" Now, up until then, I hadn't bought anything. So he goes, "It is for sale," and he goes, "It's," and he gave me a price, and it was high at that time. And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to buy it," and he goes, "Well, the last guy who said that, he ended up selling it in France." And I think it kind of burned him a little bit. So I said, "Well, I'll have it in my house." So he goes, "Well, that's kind of what the other guy said to me." So I said, "Really?" So I said, "Well, do you have a pencil and paper?" So he goes, "Why?" So I said, "I'm going to write you something so it's legal. I'm going to write, if you come to my house in 5 years from now, if it's not in my house, I'll give you $5,000. So he goes, "You don't have to do that." I said, "Well, I'm trying to prove that I'm going to keep it." So he goes, "I'll tell you what, when I get it back from Marvel, I'll call you." So about 8 months later, I got home and Kathy goes, "Michael Zeck called," and I'm like, "Really?" So she drove me in because it's large. It's like 24 by 30 something.
Mhm.
And she drove me in and I picked it up from him. And we became pretty good friends after that. As a matter of fact, Chuck Costas, he's asked me a bunch of times, if you're out there, Chuck, that he would buy it because it never hit the market. I bought it before he really did anything with it,
Mhm.
because like Marvel took it from him, and made the poster. But and he was very nice because when my daughter turned 16, we were going to Florida, and he treated us to dinner, and he treated her so like nice and stuff. He was a great guy. Um, and I have to say, so it was really nice, like getting to know these people and getting things from them. It was much nicer for me than getting a comic book, I have to
Right.
say.
Well, I think that's what turns us all on to original art collecting. It's infectious once you understand how much fun it can be, and it's just a different segment of uh, comic book fandom, right? But it's different, and for many of
Right.
us, it's more personal and fun, and the idea that you actually get to meet the people who are your heroes. I mean, when you met Dick Ayers and ended up helping him out and getting that sketch, did you met other creators before that going to any shows, or was that really
No.
the first experience?
Yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
Because I really was just into the comic books. So it was really just going to a dealer or to a comic shop that had those back issues. So I would go to shows, but I'd be really looking at the books
Hmm.
up until I started the drawings. And then, but I was only getting commissions at that time because, again, I had planned on framing him and putting a gallery in my house. So I thought the published art, it had all these things on it. And I thought aesthetically, it's not going to look great. So I ignored it for years, and that was a big mistake, but
Well,
that's what happens.
many
Um,
of us have made that mistake. So I mean, so you mentioned that when you went to purchase the Zach, that would have been your first purchase, right? But
yeah.
uh, it
Yeah.
took you 8 months to complete that deal. Did you buy any art in between then, or was the Zach still really the
Um,
first piece that
I
you picked
was,
up?
yeah, I was doing that typical thing that when you first start off, you go to a show and you needed that instant gratification. I
Hmm.
wanted to come home with a convention sketch. That was like a big deal. But after a while, as your tastes mature, and it's not the artist's fault because it's a quickie sketch, I realized I wanted something nicer from the artist to represent his skill. And I made a mistake doing that as far as getting all those quickie sketches all the time. And then I thought, you know what? I should really try to get them to do it at home. They would take their time more. I would pay more for it because I thought I'll have it forever. So I don't care about the price. If it's a little bit more, so what? So I started to get on that thing where I started to not get convention sketches because I realized that if I was going to frame it and go through all that work, I wanted something nicer. So that was a big point of mine to try to get the nicest thing I could from these artists who I knew like were legends in the field, and I knew that they wouldn't be around forever, so I wanted to grab it then. I had friends who were more into the hot guys at that moment,
Hmm.
and they were like, "Why are you going to like a Shelley Moldoff?" And I'm like, "He was a 1940s DC guy. I want something from him." And some of them were like, "Well, why? He's not the best artist. These guys are fancier today." But I wanted that thing where if you looked at my walls, you'd be able to see, yeah, that's kind of from the golden age. That's a little bit from the silver age, the modern age. It's nice. It's nice, like to have that. So that's why I did it.
I mean, you talk about keeping things for a long time. I mean, do you still have the Dick Ayers, piece that you
Yep.
got, or?
Yep. That's upstairs. Yeah. That's the only piece that's upstairs in the study. Yeah. And it's a nice piece. It's a simple piece, but it's nice. And it's the first one. So I kept
Mhm.
it. I know that Michael Zeck has told me over the years he's had some high end guys ask him if he still had it. And he goes, I don't even give him your name because I know that you're not selling it, but you wouldn't hurt my feelings. You could sell it. You'd make good money. I said, Michael, don't worry about it. So he's nice like that. But it was just very nice to get to know them. And they would tell you stories that you wouldn't hear because it was stories that it was more behind the scenes, I'd say.
Mhm.
So it was interesting to me because at the show, it's more like, oh, hi, could you do a sketch for me? And they're not really opening up all that much because they don't know you. So it was nice that they would tell me stories about things behind the scenes. And I found that really fascinating, because as the hobby got bigger, I think they cared more about who really helped to create something, who really did this or that. Like, I didn't give you a Carmine Infantino commission. I have two that were in the Carmine book.
Mhm.
I had Joe Giella ink it, of course, but I remember I was at a show with him, and Jerry Robinson was about 3 tables down. And I'm talking to Carmine because I knew him well. And all of a sudden he goes, Bill Finger and I, when we went to Coney Island, when you got into the park, at the beginning of the park, there was a big clown. And Bill Finger turned to me and said, now that is a good character. I'm going to do that. His voice started to get real loud. And he goes, I can't believe Jerry Robinson says this. I had to actually say, Carmine, you're causing a scene, calm down. But that's how aggravated they got. Bill
Mhm.
Finger did it. I was with them that day at Coney Island. People don't know that. And Jerry Robinson, he took credit, and Bob Kane, he takes credit for it. And I really had to, hey, Carmine, just calm down, okay? So a lot of them would tell you stories that you normally wouldn't hear. Shelley Moldoff, he was very nice. He told me once that there was a magazine put out about All American 16, the first appearance of the Green Lantern.
Mhm.
And Shelley Moldoff did the cover. Martin Odell did the book. And Martin Odell, they interviewed him. And in the article, he basically said, yeah, I did the whole book cover, the inside and everything. So Shelley Moldoff told me he called the magazine, he had them retract it, and he never spoke to Martin Odell again. So the more you knew these guys, like they would want to tell their stories to you. And I found that really interesting. But that happened a lot, I have to say.
Other artists taking credit for
Yeah,
work they didn't do, or those
yeah,
sorts of things. Well,
right, right.
maybe
Because
maybe after
I
they got a
don't
little older, maybe they forgot a few of the things that they had done. But I mean, out of all the creators you got to hang out with, I mean, who do you feel had the best stories, or that you got along with the best?
I like Marie Severin a lot. She was fantastic. We have a comic shop that's near me, Grasshopper Comics, and every December we do a charity drive. And the art group, they'll donate artwork and stuff like that. And I asked Marie Severin if she would go to the store and just sketch for an hour or two. And she said, okay. And she was sketching little hulks and everything. And then I remember after about 2 hours, I said, if you're tired, we'll go home. And she goes, I'll stay as long as you want me to stay. And I said, it's not up to me. And she goes, I'll stay as long as you want me to stay. I mean, like, she was really nice about everything. And then she would also tell me, like, when she was at Marvel, it was a boys club. And she said there weren't women. And she said it was a funny thing for her, and I felt a little bad because, she said that they would sort of talk among themselves more. And, but she did say that when Jack Kirby would come into the room, she said, like little boys, they'd follow him over to his table. He'd get out a big sheet of paper, and in the left-hand corner, he would draw a big fist. In the bottom diagonal right corner, he would draw a foot. Then he'd fill up the middle of the page, no erasing, no nothing, and it would be like, boom, fantastic. And she said that he'd be chomping on the cigar. And she said, like little kids, they'd all be like, oh, Jack, that's, Jack, So, but she was very nice. Herb Trimp had really been fond of her. And what happened was when Marie started to have some medical issues, I had gotten a Dr. Strange from her. And she came over my house and gave it to me. And she would not accept a dime. And I felt really bad. And I said, you have to accept money, and she goes, I don't accept it from friends. So I took her to the Cheesecake Factory, and she was knocking down beers. I'm having a soda. It was really sad because the waiter, he's like, you having soda? And she's like, I'll have another beer, it's embarrassing. So, but she was very nice. And then I had Herb Trim do a pencil layout of the Hulk and the Wolverine, and I said to him, she's going to ink it and to paint it. But what happened was she was having these issues, and I would call her and I'd say, have you started it? And she, what was it again? Like, she was starting to have some issues. And then eventually she ended up having a stroke, and she went into an assisted living. So what happened was I thought, I'm not going to get that piece back, even the pencil piece. It's not her fault. But I remembered she had a very good friend, Jean, who sort of did everything for her. So I got Jean's number and I called her, but I'm thinking that's going to be a weird call because Jean, I don't know her, So I called her up and I said, this might sound funny, but I had given Marie a piece of artwork and she's not going to be able to finish it. I understand. If I could please just get it back. Because Jean had access to her apartment and everything. So Jean was very weary, which I don't blame. And she goes, what's your name? And I said, oh, it's Jeffrey Harnett. So she goes, Jeffrey? I'm like, yeah. So she goes, Marie talks about you all the time. Come over. So I come over. She has all these folders and she's looking through them. And a bunch of people had sent her checks, but none of them were cash. So there's no problem. But Jean said that Marie had a hard time to tell someone that I'm not going to draw for you. But she couldn't at that point anymore. So, But they were in cash, so there's no problem. So she's going through all the folders, and I described the drawing to her. And then all of a sudden, she gets to the last drawing, the last page, and she goes, I can't believe it. So I said, what? So she goes, she did it. I said, no, she didn't do it because I've been calling her every, couple of times a month. So she pulls it out. Sure enough, done, painted, inked, and signed. I don't think she realized she had done it, So yeah, it's that one, and that's in her book. That's in the Severin book as her final work. And Herb Trimp was very nice, to her.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. Well, it's amazing that that Marie was able to find it, right? I mean, they were able to find it in the stack. That's and it was completed. But wow.
Yeah.
And Trimpy got to see it in person, not as a scan, and he.
No, he didn't.
That's too bad.
No, what happened was when I got it back, and then what happened was she was in the assisted living, and I had gone to see her. And just to show you how talented she was, I go in there, and there's the posters on the wall of some items. And so what happened was, I had asked her, "Did you do them?" Because it looked like her stuff. And she said that, "Yeah, I did them." And I'm looking at her right arm was in a sling. And I said, "How did you draw them?" And she takes her left arm and she motions like I drew it. So she was drawing them lefty.
Wow.
I mean, she was really a talented person. She really was. And then when she went into the assisted living, Jeff Jaworski, who had repped Herb Trimp, he sent me an email and he said, "I know that you're a good friend of hers. He'd like to sell a piece of artwork and give her the money." So I coordinated that with Jeff, and that was very nice, Herb Trimp.
No, that's gorgeous. Great, and and I know what you mean, because there's a lot of stories that involve both Trimpy and Marie. Where they you knew that Herb really appreciated the guidance that Marie gave
Yeah.
him in the bullpen there, and they definitely had a strong bond between the two of them.
Yes. I will say this, not to offend any collectors or anything, but when Marie Severin got the Herb Trimp pencils, she immediately told me he's gotten much better. And the reason why I bring that up, a couple of artists that I've spoken to, I know that they always tell me that a lot of the collectors and fans, they think that in the period that they read the comics was at the height of the skill of that artist. And that afterwards, their skill set to some extent decreased. And a lot of them took exception to it, that we're always working on our craft. And I'm not saying that every artist got better, but there's certainly some who did. And I know that Severin, she immediately, when she saw the Herb Trimp pencil, said, "Oh, he's gotten much better." And I just thought that that was an important point, that it wasn't just that when you read the comics in your era, that's when they had to be at their best. No one ever got better, and some of them did and some of them didn't. But some of them did, and I think they took exception to it. Like, that's my craft. Like, I had repped Joe Giella for years, right? And he was always working on his craft, all meticulously, and he actually got better, because the recreation covers, even that I've seen on Heritage that he did in the 80s and 90s, he was better in the 2000s. He did it smoother, the gray wash, it looked like he sprayed it on. There were no brush strokes, no nothing. And he also felt that he had gotten better, So I thought that that was a nice point that she made, that it's not really true that no one ever gets better. But she also felt that when you're reading the books in your time period, you like to think, well, that's when they were at their best. And I'm not so sure that holds like true for every artist. Some for sure. But I just think that those points are important to make sometimes.
Right. Well, I can see that. I think that it just means that she always kind of felt like she was at some level, a teacher, and watching what Trimpy was doing, and so it was important to her to see that he was continuing to grow as an artist. I mean, you have to look. Marie started really early. I'm sure she looked back at work that she had done 10, 15 years prior to, when she was talking with you at that point. And she probably didn't, look upon her older work, too favorably either. I mean, every artist should be growing all the time. So that's a good point, though, that she made without question.
Yeah. And, then one of the early ones I got was after the Zeck piece. I had gone to a show and Mike Mignola had just finished Gotham by Gaslight. And and he was at a show, and I go over to him and I said, "Oh, are you sketching, and how much is it?" And he goes, "I'm not sketching," like point blank. So I said, "Okay." So I walk away, and Zeck was at the show. So I say hi to him, and he goes, "So who have you gotten a drawing from?" And I said, "Well, I asked Mike Mignola, but he ain't drawing, So he goes, "Well, follow me." So I follow him, and he goes to Mike, and he goes, Mike, this is a good friend of mine. Draw something for him. So Mignola goes, I'm not drawing at the show. So Mike goes, mail it to him. So he goes, give me your name and give me your address. So I said, well, how about if they get it? He wasn't thrilled, which I understand. So about a month later, you have it there. He did the Batman. It's like a homage to the cover. Yeah. So he mails me that, and the funny thing is, years later, I take the photograph to the New York Comic Con, and I go up to Mignola's line, and he's got a long line, but I wanted to thank him in person again. So I get up to him, and I show him the photograph, and I said, I wanted to thank you. And he goes, where did you get it? And I said, you mailed it to me. And now picture, there's a long line, so they're hearing this. So I said, you mailed it to me. And he goes, I'm asking you again, where did you get it? I repeat it. And then finally he goes, I'm going to throw you off the line. Where did you get it? And for some reason, I don't know why, when he mailed it to me years before, he was living in Greenwich in Manhattan, but his address was 666. So it stuck in my head. So I said 666 Greenwich, and his face turned white. And he goes, I never mail anything to anybody. I go, I can't believe I mailed that. He goes, I don't mail anything out. So I said, well, you did that time, So he looked at it and he said, oh, that's nice. Keep it. That's going to be worth money, he told me, And then I left. But that was funny because he was really mad at first, because I guess he never mails out anything, but he did that day,
You would think that when he's only mailed one piece out in his career, that would be the one he would remember. But
well, he was, and it was funny because he was getting like ready to tell me to get off the line. I'm thinking, you did mail it to me. I'm not lying, But for some reason, I was fortunate that his address just popped in my head. I don't know why. And when I said it, he knew that I couldn't have known that, So then he realized, oh, okay, I actually did do that, But that was a good one from him, that I got. That's a nice one. So I was happy, I was lucky,
I would say not too many people get colored Batman pieces from Mike mailed personally. Free of charge.
Yeah, I mean, so that was good, but I mean, I've been fortunate a lot of times, and some of the artists, they really took a lot of pride in it, like Gene Colan, he took a lot of pride. I really had liked that in some of those old time guys. When you went to them and asked them for commission, they were so pleased that you thought enough of them to want something from them and to pay them. And a lot of people thought that Gene Colan, a lot of his commissions, they thought was good or is better than the comic artwork because he really took it personally. Mm-hmm. So when I asked him to do a Dr. Doom, that's in the book. You have the drawing. I remember Clifford Meth was doing the Invincible Gene Colan. And he reached out online and he said, if anyone has a drawing to send it in. And let me see if I'll stick it in the book. So I sent it in because I thought it was really good. And he wrote me back and he goes, I love it. And when the book came out, I was really shocked. He put it on the first page after the introduction. And then I wrote him and I said, oh, you really gave it a whole page? And he said, I told you, I really liked it. But when I asked Gene to do it, he goes, he's got to be decadent. He's got to be powerful. And he was like really excited. And it's nice though to see that in an artist, And then later on, I got him to do, which you also have, a Daredevil fighting the Kingpin, and he put him on a chessboard. And that was really a nice piece he did for me. And what I did was at that Ramapo show in Jersey when they had it, I brought it to Tom Palmer because I thought if I had a pencil piece of Doom, that was good because that's Colan with the heavy pencils. But I wanted Palmer to ink him because that's the team. And Tom Palmer was very nice. He said, do you want me to make a photostat and ink the photostat? And I said, no, I want you to ink it as if you were doing the comic book. So he said, okay. And while he was doing it, he did it from home, but he called me, I would talk to him. And he told me that all those years that he did comics, he was also doing commercial work. And he told me that he never told either one about his other career. So when he was doing commercial work, they never knew that he did a comic book and vice versa. He said he wanted to keep them separate because of the image of commercial, and then he's doing comics. So he kept that separate. I thought that was interesting, but he was a great inker.
Oh yeah, without question. This is I love this image. When I was going through the slides and the images you sent me, this one's just so powerful. And in part it's because of Palmer's inks on it. I think Palmer was probably, at least in my opinion, one of Colin's best inkers. I've got a few Colin Palmer pages, and they're just phenomenal. Doctor Strange stuff. I mean, that's like a perfect era for me as far as collecting anything by Gene.
Yeah, I thought so also. Palmer and him were perfect, and Palmer had said that as well. He said, a lot of people, they can't ink Colin good because he's so heavy on the pencils. He goes, but we just click. So that was really not, I try to get some commissions that I got the famous team, which is not always easy. It's kind of hard to get them both on it sometimes. And then the next one I'd mention is, which you also have, I got Marshall Rogers and Terry Austin to do a Batman. It was my scene because I knew that Marshall Rogers had been an architect. And I thought if I had them running down the alley with bricks and a dumpster and fire escapes, that he would love that. So I talked to Marshall first. It was at a Big Apple Con. They were both there, Austin and Marshall. And I knew Marshall a little bit from shows. So what happened was I tell him the scene, but I told him, I said, look, I want Batman's cape behind him. So he laughed. So I said, I know you like to put it in front so that you only have to show his feet and his ears. So he was laughing. So he goes, you really want it in back? I said, yeah, I want the cape flowing behind him. So he said, all right, I'll do that. So what happened was I told him, you do the pencils and then mail it to Terry Austin. So I stopped by Terry and he knew what was going to happen. So about 2 months later, Marshall Rogers, he calls me and he says, it's done. So I said, oh, okay, you got it back from Terry? He goes, no. So I said, you didn't have him ink it? He goes, I forgot. So I said, really? So he goes, yeah. Now he gave the Joker a red tongue. So I looked at it because he sent me a scan and I'm looking at it, and it's got a red tongue and he had the ha-ha-ha's like laying down. And he goes, it's too good for me to not, sell because it's really like a cover piece or better. He goes, I have to sell it. He goes, but I am happy. He goes, because if I got it, if I have it to do over, I like the ha-ha-ha standing up because that's more my style. So I said, all right, sell it, which they ended up selling it to a guy on your gallery site. And then he sold it to Heritage, and Heritage, they sold it. I remember like I don't know, 3-4 years ago. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing was when he did the pencils, he sent it to Terry. I got a phone call at home from Terry Austin. And he goes, Jeff? And I go, yeah. And he goes, you're a good friend of Marshall, huh? And I said, no, but I know him. Why? He goes, this is a hell of a piece. So he goes, but I have a favor to ask you. So I said, what? He goes, I don't like the red tongue. I said, Terry, I'm paying you to ink it. If you don't like the red tongue, don't put it in. So he goes, but you have to promise me to never tell Marshall. I said, fine. So that's what he did. So he didn't put in the red tongue. He really disliked that part of it. And then he inked it, and then I got it in the mail. But that was a good team to get. And then I had the writer of the book sign the mat of the frame it's in. So like I have the whole team, But that piece I really liked because, to get them both to do it was really nice. And I like the fact that Terry Austin really had liked the piece. So again, I think, I was fortunate in the fact that I was able to get really good examples of commissions, which I like as much as some of my published, because I don't think I could get a better image of some of these characters on a published piece. And I think they really extended themselves a lot. So I really cherish them, you know.
So how did you approach a lot of these commissions where you were giving explicit direction? I mean, in this case,
Um,
it sounded like you had some for Marshall, but I mean, what was your typical approach to requesting a commission?
well, with Gene Colan, with the Doctor Doom, I just said I want him in a laboratory, and that was it. And he put him in that laboratory with all this crazy equipment. With the Daredevil and the Kingpin, I just said I want them fighting, and he put them on a chessboard. But I didn't want to give him too much because he really was, as I said, engaged in doing commissions. So he wanted to do a good job for you. So I thought, why am I really walking him through it? See, Marshall, I wanted the cape behind Batman. I didn't want any shortcuts. And I had this vision of the Joker staring down. The Batman is running towards the viewer. Robin is hopping over a dumpster. You know, I really had that image. And I knew that Marshall would like that because he was an architect. So it kind of fit him. What I did with most artists, to be honest with you, is I really thought that I wanted them to do a good job and to have a good time. So I would tell them, look, I'm not a flipper, and I know you hear that a lot. But back then, you didn't hear about that as much. But I said, like, if they would give me a price, I would add on. And they would know, well, I was already willing to take this amount.
Hmm.
So I said, I'd like to give you more. And whatever you could do, I'd really appreciate it because this is a one-shot deal. Once I get it in the mail, whatever it is. Like I've had friends who for $50, $100 said, well, I wasn't going to go that much higher. And I always said, but when you get the piece and you say, you know, I would have loved to get a little more background, it's too late. You know, in most cases, it's over. So to me, I always thought that difference of the money is not going to change my life. I'm not going to buy an airplane. I'm not going to buy a mansion. My lifestyle will stay the same. So I would give them extra. And I think they really appreciated that. So I thought that helped me. And I got to know them too. I don't know. It just clicked well. You know, a lot of guys in my art group say, yeah, at the shows, you have a knack. You start to talk to them. It's like you've known them for 20 years, you know? And, but I really try to pick out people that I thought, you know, these guys had meant something. They really were the building blocks, the early building blocks on a lot of them. I wasn't really into the new hot guy at the moment because I knew that they'd only be around for a while. So that really had helped me to meet those kind of people that were really nice, you know.
Hmm.
John Buscema, which you have, I don't think I could have gotten a better Silver Surfer piece than that. As a matter of fact, when I showed a photograph to Steve Epting, the artist, he loves John Buscema, which I really didn't know. And he had me send him a scan of it. He just loves Buscema, and he loved that piece. I showed it to Sal once at a show, and he was like, he really did a number on your commission. He goes, wow. He goes, you know. But the funny thing about that was I had talked to John Buscema once about doing a Silver Surfer for me. And then what happened was life took over and I got busy, and about a year went by, and he had given me a price, and I went back to him. I sent him a letter, and I just reminded him of what we talked about and the price. But I wasn't saying like that the price was in stone, but just to give him a ballpark idea of what we talked about. And he wrote me back a letter, and I have it on the back of the frame. On the backs of my frame, I have a lot of stuff. I have like postcards from Severin. I got from Joe Sinnott. I have notes from him and everybody. But so he sent me a letter, and he goes, you know, when I do a recreation cover, it's a lot easier. I'm just light boxing it. It's still work, but I'm doing it. He goes, you're asking me for an original idea. He goes, my prices have started to go up. And he was like annoyed, which I understand because I guess he thought I was like trying to pigeonhole him into that was the price. So I wrote him back and I said, listen, I'm very sorry. I only did that to kind of refresh your memory. I'll gladly pay more, I'm sorry that it came across like that. And I think when I did that, he realized, oh, he wasn't really saying that to me the way I took it. So I think he charged me like 100 more, but he really did a great job. I love this piece. I just think it really captures the surfer great. I don't think I could have gotten a better published piece. So I'm happy with this piece.
Right. No, this is amazing. Absolutely. And what is it on 11 by 14, 11 by 17?
I think it's 10 by 15, I think.
Okay.
But it's real. I mean, but it's really in person. It's really stunning. He was a great artist, and and like I said, Sal thought Sal thought I knew him very well, and I didn't. I just said no. I talked to him, and I guess and he goes, "Wow, he really took time on that." And I know that Steve Epting, he wanted that scan of it. He goes, "That's an amazing piece," So again, I was very fortunate that I kind of clicked with a lot of them, and it's commissions that you may not see a lot. I'll say this. I always thought as a collector, I'm never going to have the best collection. That's for sure. There's guys who have a lot of money and they could buy things that I couldn't buy. But I always thought realistically, I wanted to have a collection that I had enough pieces that had a certain niche or something that even the best collectors, if they saw my stuff, would say, I would like X amount of those in mine. I thought that would be a good goal realistically to shoot for.
Well, that brings us to a question that I had kind of rolling into this whole thing was just that, you don't populate your CAF gallery with any of the pieces that we're seeing here. You, in fact, have nothing in your CAF gallery. As a longtime member of CAF, why is that?
Okay. First of all, this is the first Zoom meeting that I've ever done. I am very untechy. My wife, when you clicked in, was standing here to make sure that I did not screw it up. So Kathy, I've had her here the whole time. She set up everything. I don't know a camera from a microphone from anything. So to put a gallery in your thing is way beyond. I could email. That's my extent. I hardly use a cell phone. So that was way beyond me. The other thing was I used to be in an art group with Ron Salenthal, Shapiro, Stephen Davidge, Leo Chua, and I used to talk to Leo a lot about the galleries, and he would say, yeah, I put my stuff in. Then some guys that he knew said, I don't put everything in. I'm putting some stuff that I don't show. And then it almost gave me like a grayer area, like, well, even these guys, they're showing a lot, but they're not showing everything. So how do they pick? Is it a special piece that they think I want it fresh to the market if I ever sold it? So that even gave me that pause, like, I'm not sure. Well, I'm just not sure of even that. But it was mainly that I don't have the skill set to even put up a gallery.
Because you're a person who's not using it to market. A lot of people who use CAF use it to kind of, potentially get somebody's interest in a piece. Since you don't really sell, trade, or whatnot, it's actually a safe space for you. I mean, people might bother you, but at the end of the day, you'd be getting a few more eyeballs on your stuff, because this is the first time I'm seeing obviously a lot.
Yeah. Most people have really not seen my stuff. The art group has, family has, but not really a lot of people. But it was mainly because, again, I that's way beyond my thing. Like I said, this Zoom thing is to me like the pinnacle of my technology career. And then, I basically wanted to, just continue in the hobby. And then, of course, I eventually started to realize about the published pieces. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, yeah, I missed the buy. I could have gotten a lot of this for a really great price. Now I'm kind of, stuck. As a matter of fact, when Alan Malin and Gary Berman, they had a store right near my house for a while. And they had George Perez there for a day. And I went in and I was speaking to him. And he was living in Jamaica Estates, which is not far from me. And he asked me what I have. And at that time, I really had the Zeck piece. That was pretty much it, except for maybe a conventional little sketch. And when I mentioned it to him, he goes, "I'd like to come and see it." I said, "Really?" So he goes, "Yeah." So we set up a date. He came over, and Kathy and I are there. We brought him to see it, and we were standing behind him. He stood there for 5 minutes, didn't say a word, was kind of shaking his head, looked at it, thanked us, and walked out. I'll never forget that. He was like, I think, really impressed by the work, I think, but he was nice, but he didn't say a word. He just stood there, saw it, and left. So I've had a couple of those odd things. And then Johnny Romita Sr., he was very nice. I sent him once a letter saying, would he do a Green Goblin Spider-Man? And once a year, I'd send him a letter. I know that you're busy. What's the chances? And I sent that for years. So one day he goes into Grasshopper Comics, that's by my house, and they tell me, you'll never guess who was here. I said, who? He goes, Johnny Romita Sr. I'm thinking he must live near me. I look him up because back then the yellow or the white pages, I look him up, I call his house, and he answered the phone, and I said, is this Johnny Romita? And I could tell it was him, and he goes, who's calling? And I said, well, it's Jeff Harnett. You're not going to know me, but I had asked you once for a Green Goblin Spider-Man, and he goes, hold on. So I said, yeah. He goes, about 10 years? I said, yeah, why? He goes, I had it clipped on to my board at Marvel. I really want to apologize that I never got around to it. So he goes, listen, he goes, my stuff has become very expensive. I have a box at home of people requesting things. I called it the guilt box. I can't do it for them because, the value of it, it's a funny thing to do. He said, but I remember you. He said, I'll tell you what, give me your name, your address, and I'll see what I could do. I'm getting older now, so I don't do a lot. I said, okay, fine. And let me know how much, So he, about a week later or two, I get this thing in the mail, and it's Spider-Man, and there's these buildings behind him. It's about 9 by 12, but it's nice. So I call him up, and his wife answered, and he wasn't available. And I said, oh, I'm calling up to thank him, and I'd like to speak to him. So the next day, the phone rings, and Kathy goes, there's a Johnny Romita Sr. on the phone. I say, give me the phone. So I get the phone, and he goes, I want to thank you for calling me and appreciating it. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've done things for people, and once they get it, you never hear from them. I said, John, the least I could do is thank you, and also I'd like to pay you. He goes, Jeff, don't insult me. He goes, you waited a long time, and you're not getting what you wanted anyway. He goes, listen, we'll call it even. I don't want money. He goes, but I'm really appreciative that you took the time to call. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't I call him and thank him? But he said over the years, he kind of got burned because he said, I would do a favor for someone, and once they got the piece, they were gone. But he was a very nice guy, so he was really a sweetheart. I ended up buying, you have it, the 1975, the Spider-Man calendar. I bought that. I just thought it had great character inclusion. At that time, it had a lot of characters that in those years were in the books. It's got a Spider-Man, Peter Parker's face, and I had really liked that. And the funny thing is, I know a guy who was the neighbor to Johnny Romita Jr. And I asked him if he could have Johnny Romita Sr. sign the mat, because I didn't want him to sign the art because there's no room. He'd have to do it over, someone's face. So the funny thing was, I took it out of the frame because it's expensive. And I had the guy take a shot on his cell phone so that he could show John Romita that I did own that piece. And he brought it to him, and he signed the matter. And then I had my framing guy frame it back for me. So, but he was a very nice guy.
Yeah, this is an amazing piece, and Jonah Jameson is done perfectly. I mean, but this is why Romita Sr. was so great on Spidey. I mean, his caricatures were just perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
Mary Jane's just incredible. I mean, this is just it's unbelievable. And you own it, a calendar piece. How incredible is that?
Yeah, he was very nice though. You know, I try to be honest. I try to get pieces that have a niche to it, whether they're a published piece or a commission, something that has something to it. So I thought the calendar, it's got great characters at that point in time. It's got Spider-Man basically full figured. It's got his face on it and everything. So I try to get those kind of pieces that there's a specific reason why I got it. You know, it's just not a generic interior page or a generic splash. You know, I try to get to where there's something important about the piece.
So what year was the sketch that you got in the mail? When you got it?
That was years ago, probably somewhere in the 90s. I don't even remember. You know,
you started writing in the 80s?
Ago. What?
So you started writing in the late 80s and
finally got
it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because I had liked his work and I was a Spider-Man fan at the time. And I thought I'd write him. It can't hurt. The most he'll say is no. And he didn't, and he never responded to them. But once a year, I would just keep my foot in the door, like, maybe someday I'll get a shock, you know. But he remembered it though, and I couldn't believe he had it clipped on his board for 10 years. He goes, I had it on my clipboard. Because as soon as I said my name, he goes, and then he told me the story, which I thought was pretty incredible that he kept it. I thought he'd throw it out, like, okay, here's just another guy who's asking me for a commission. Who cares, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you know, but he was very thoughtful like that, you know. Yeah, he was very nice about that stuff, you know. But yeah, I tried to really get things that, like I said, you know, there's something important to it. I was a Doctor Strange fan, and you have that. And that was from Marvel Premiere number 10. But that was an important story with that Shumar Garath, and that and Doctor Strange kind of had to destroy the Ancient One to get to him. And this is where the Ancient One tells him that he's ascending to a higher plateau and that he should be the Sorcerer Supreme. So the last page of that well-known book, Strange is staring out like he's now the Sorcerer Supreme of the world, and the Ancient One's right above him. I thought that was a really great page.
Well, you know, Frank Brunner, Doctor Strange is pretty hot these days. So
yeah. But I thought that, that was an important moment in the mythos.
Yeah, no, it's you know, it's you just don't see enough of Frank's work out there, and something of this caliber is, you know, just rare to see at all. So this is it's a beautiful piece. This is a piece I'd love to see in person.
Yeah, it's, well, if you're ever on Long Island, call me.
I will do that.
No problem.
I won't have to send you letters for 10 years.
No, absolutely not. I don't have a guilt box. And then, yeah, so that piece, and I was looking for a Doctor Strange piece for quite a while, and I never caught like the right piece. Again, I wanted it to be where there's something special about the page. And when I saw this, I knew it was from a good run, an important book. And when the Ancient One ascends and he tells him, you're ready to be the Sorcerer Supreme, and he stares out, I thought, that's the one.
No, you did pretty well with that one. Definitely. I was just, well, where do you want to go from here? I mean, we have other artists to look at.
If you pull up the Conan page where they hang Bayleet.
All right, that was this one here.
Right. Now that page I actually bought because I wanted to get an important moment where something changes in the mythos of a character. And obviously I couldn't afford that with Batman, Spider-Man, you know, those things would be a fortune, you know, the death of the Green Goblin or something crazy, or Gwen Stacy. And I thought Conan, he's had a good run. Buscema's a great artist. Bayleet was a big character for that book. And most of his interior pages, he's fighting or he's with a woman, and they're good pages, but they're pages that you could come across a lot. And when I saw this page, I thought, and it was in issue 100. And when I spoke to Roy Thomas, he said it was the 100th issue. We had to do something really big. And Baylit was a big character. He said, we thought if we killed her, that would really mark the 100th issue. It's an important run. It's a turning point. And I thought, and so when he told me, it just kind of reassured me of the importance of that page when I had owned it. But when I saw it, I thought, that's a moment where she's not coming back. She comes back once to save him because she always had promised him that I'll come for you one more time. But I really like the fact that that's different than most of his interior pages. That's a moment that you don't see, and she was a big character. So I bought that because of that reason, that I thought that that was a moment.
That's without question. I mean, I was reading Conan. I bought this book off the newsstand, so yeah, it was a shocking thing to see, and but it's cool to see it in your collection. I mean, so pieces like this, I presume you picked up on the secondary market from dealers or auction houses.
Yeah, I actually bought this one off a Comic Link.
Okay.
And I bought that one off a Comic Link, and yeah, I've bought some stuff from dealers, but I've bought quite a bit on auctions too. So but like I said, I'm always looking for something to the piece. Then the next one, if you want to show it, is the Frank Miller Ronin. I bought that one from Heritage as well.
Yeah, that was this one.
Yeah, now that one, that was the first Ronin page that Heritage had ever auctioned. I didn't know the price of it. I didn't follow prices of Ronin because you really didn't see the pages selling before then much. And Heritage, like I said, they had a whole article about it. That's the first page that they've ever sold. But I like the fact that it wasn't an exciting page, but it was page 1 to kick the story off. And it had Ronin and his master. And again, I thought page 1 has the master, Ronin again. It had that little niche to it, like it started the story off. So when they did the Ronin, the artist edition, I remember the guy who ran it, he called me from California, and he was willing to come out here with a little computer and take the shot of it. And because he said, oh, it's page 1, it kicks off the whole story. So I ended up going to Albert Moy's brother, who's got a good printer or something, and he printed it for the guy, and then he sent it to him, But again, I thought that had a certain thing to it, so I bought that one.
Well, the page that launches, one of the more, a book that was really important in Frank Miller's gestation as being, a great storyteller, doing his own thing with this book. I mean, I loved the Ronin story, even though it was somewhat hard to follow at times. It was still, you had to enjoy it because it was one of those first opportunities where you got to see, an artist sort of in the mainstream go out and do something on his own in a book format that was so unique at that time, right? So no, this is it's amazing to get. So you know Albert then?
I know him a little bit. I don't know him great, but what happened was the guy that ran that company who did the book, he knew that Albert's brother has a very good printer or something, because he does, I think, posters for shows and everything. So he was willing to fly out here. I said, what's the sense of flying out here? It's ridiculous. So he said, well, if you could go to him and he'll do it for you. So I said, okay. The next one is the Fantastic Four, the family portrait. That's from Marvel Treasury #2. The first one had Spider-Man. The second one was dedicated to the Fantastic Four. This one was a very well-known double-page splash of the family. And again, when I saw it, I remembered it, and I thought, that's nice. It's a family shot, and Dr. Doom is crashing through the window in the back, and I just thought that would be a very good Fantastic Four piece to have.
Yeah, it's not too bad. No, of course, this is my childhood right here. I mean, as far as looking, at the team and the storylines that were based around these characters, I mean, yeah, this would be the cornerstone of many, many Marvel collectors, from this era. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I know that when I was in that group, Stephen Davidge, because we'd send scans out, and when he saw the scan, he was very nice. He said, "That's a piece I'd like to sit on the floor and just look at for days." He goes, "But now I know the guy that owns it." So he was very nice about it. But I just thought that again, it had that certain thing to it. It had that certain allure to the piece. So I bought it.
Well, you lucked out. I mean, this is something that, if another collector had it, it would never be leaving their collection. Like, it's probably never leaving your collection.
Exactly.
It made its way there.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. Then the next one, if you want to look, is Lee Bermejo. It's John Constantine, and he's sitting with the When I first saw him, I thought, like a Mignola, like you would know Mignola style, Sienkiewicz, you would know Bermejo. I thought this guy is going to be big. Every little crease in the jacket, every little thing is perfect. And I thought, and it really captures Constantine's book because he's sitting there with a smirk and he's drinking with these ghouls. But the pity is, if you saw the published cover, they really did it a big disservice. You can't even see the bottles in the back. It's like a brownish background. They just killed it. And if I was him, I'd be really disappointed because it's so much nicer it's brighter on the cover. It's very shaded. It's much darker, and the background is really, you can't see the bottles. But I just thought that this really captured the character, and I knew that Bermejo was going to be big. This was like earlier on, and I thought, it's a cover, let me get it, and I'll have something from him, and then he just got bigger and bigger. And he was not at shows, so I really couldn't even really get to him, really. So now, if you ever got him to the OAX show, your show, that would be a home run. That would be a home run, Bill. You get a lot of people saying, now that's impressive.
It would be. It would definitely be. I mean,
I know
I've met him several times because he's gone to San Diego quite a bit, right. And I've worked a lot. I should call him. I don't have his number, but I work with Mark Hay, who reps him, and who you probably got this piece from, I imagine, unless you got it secondhand through an auction house or something.
I got that. I actually bought that at Comic Link, and it didn't go for a lot because I think it was still early on, and I thought this is a home run,
Oh, without question. I mean, he's always been somebody who you knew was going to be very special. I mean, he works a little bit more traditional or non-traditionally these days. He's doing a lot of digital work, but that just makes these pieces all the harder to come by. And this is it's a beauty. So Dave TV wants to know, when is the next Huracan?
Oh God, he runs this little show at a church. He's so ridiculous. He's a character. He's a very nice guy though. He's very nice though. The Marie Severin, the Doctor Strange, she did the urn in Steve Ditko style. That's what she told me. She always liked how he drew it. But it's really nice though in person. It's really colorful, and she brought it to my house. She was so proud of it, but it really came out nice. And I thanked her, and like I said, I had to take her out to eat because she would not accept a dime for it, and she would send me postcards which I have on the backs of the frames. She would draw like the Hulk behind a rock and saying, "Sev says hi." She always says Sev, or something about her, her little trip or something,
Right.
And Joe Sinnott, he sent me, you don't have that though, but he sent me for a Christmas gift, a Fantastic Four with a shot of Dr. Doom and these castles behind it. I mean, he was a great guy too. I knew him well. I felt very bad when we went to the East Coast show that Cliff ran years ago, after the show, he would have dinner for all of us. And Joe Sinnott wanted to sit with Joe Giella and me. And during the meal, he looked up at me and real serious, he goes, "We did good work, right?" And like, I felt really bad because at his age then, because he was older then and a little more fragile, and he was still like kind of like asking like the work he did it mean something, was it important? And I said, Joe, your work is legendary. People are going to be seeing that forever, and then he said, you think so? And I said, yeah, of course, and I felt really bad that he was like asking like, how it was. Yeah, I think a lot of the artists, at that time, they weren't sure of how people viewed it because comic art back then was like kiddie stuff, comic books.
Right. Well, I mean, they a different era, right? They didn't have the internet.
Yeah,
The artists today have immediate gratification, posting stuff to Instagram or their Facebook, and so
right,
they're high-fived all the time. But those guys, outside of getting to read the letters page in a comic book, didn't have or the guilt pile that Romita Sr. had. Didn't get to hear how much people admired them. It's unless they were at shows, like you said. I mean, Creation Con, and if at several shows in New York, of course, from Suling and whatnot. I mean, it's always that there were opportunities, but it wasn't hammered as home as it is
right,
today with creators who are out there and are active.
right.
So
If you pull up the Russ Heath, the war one,
I can do that.
he was a character.
Let's see, where was that one? That was this one right here. I
Right.
love Russ Heath stuff. Every time I see a Russ Heath piece, I want to own it.
Yeah, he was great. I met him and I asked him if he would do a commission, and I originally had asked him for 11 by 14. So he was out in California. I call him once a month, and he was really into women, and that's all he would talk about. So I'd say, it's Jeff Harnett from New York. Have you started mine? I'm drawing this woman now. What about? And he would go on. I'd say, Ross, can we get back to the commission? So he told me that when he was at the Playboy Mansion, that he kind of stayed there for almost a year. He kind of just like weaseled his way in there. And he said that one day there was a knock on the door, and of course they knocked and said, Russ, get out. And that he had to leave. But so one time I finally call him and he goes, I'm working on it now. It's one of the best things I ever did. It's 13 by 22. He said, but he goes, if you ever sell it, and he starts cursing at me. If you ever sell this, if you ever, he starts cursing. I let him go on for a minute or two. And then I said, Russ, I said, I'm not selling it. Just get it done and mail it to me. I'm not going to sell it. And just, calm down. But the funny thing was, I showed it to a friend of mine over the years, and he really liked the piece, and he wanted a small commission from him. So he sends him money, and my friend calls me a couple of months later, and he goes, can I stop over? I said, yes, sure. So he stops over, and he said, I'd like to see the piece that Russ did for you. I said, okay. He comes down, he sees it, and he shows me his. And Russ took like 1/3 of this one and just put it onto his. Which I thought was really kind of like, okay, you're taking pieces of it and selling it as commissions. So I saw Russ at a show about a year later, and I go up to him and I said, Russ, I said, you're taking pieces of mine and you're selling them as commissions. Now, it didn't bother him that he was doing that. The funny thing was, he goes, I can't believe you found out. What's the odds on you finding out that I sent it to a friend of yours? I can't get over it. I said, Russ, forget about that. I don't want you doing that. He goes, but what's the odds? Give me odds. I said, Russ, forget the odds. I said, I don't want you doing that. It was a commission for me, and it's not even fair to them. You're just copying a little piece of mine to give it to them, the two guys standing or a tank. But all he could do is, I can't believe you found out. Yeah,
Well, it's true. Well, honestly, I mean, for those people who do commissions, I mean, that's the last thing you want to see, is that the artist just, that's a standard piece position, pose for those characters, and they do them over and over, or in your case where they're straight up copying, or just they're doing cover recreations and they just always look identical. I mean, nobody wants to own, if you're getting commission, you never want to know that another collector has the exact same image.
Exactly.
Let alone in some cases hundreds of the exact same image out there, because they always draw, whatever, Dr. Doom's face the exact same way over and over again in the same pose. You can't turn it a little, cant the head a little ways one way or another, pull the, just do something a little different. Those things frustrate commission collectors a lot, and I think in some ways it might deter them from wanting to get commissions, because that's always a fear, I think, that everybody has. And then so rightfully so, you were upset. I'd be upset if I were you too.
But he didn't care about that. He just couldn't get over that. I found out. He was the character. If you pull up the Joe Giella one, it's got all the characters in it with the Batman and the Joker and the light.
Yeah. That's the color piece, right?
Yeah. Now, I met Joe in the early 90s at a little show on Long Island. A guy was trying to start a convention, and he had it in the back of a restaurant, and it was not well attended. And I spoke to Joe, and for some reason, I don't know, we got along. He gave me his number, and we started to talk. And then over time, he was the nicest guy you could have met. And I realized that he wasn't a businessman, which his wife Shirley would certainly, if she was sitting here, say, Jeff, you're right. She told me that all the time. So his thing was he wanted to draw. The art part, when someone said, I really don't have a lot of money, but could you do a painting for me? Oh, I guess I could. So as a friend, I said, Joe, I don't want any money. I'm going to take over for you. We're going to do commissions, but I'm going to run it for you. And I want to bring you to shows, because Joe always said that he had lived in a cocoon. He didn't know that anyone knew him. So what happened was I started to do his commissions, and I would bring him to a show, and we would have a long line. And every show he'd say, Jeff, are they here to see me? And I would say, no, Joe, they're here to see me. I said, yes, they're here to see you. He was always fascinated. We would have artists come at shows, shake his hand. Michael Golden, he came up to us once and he goes, Joe, you're not going to remember this. The first thing I ever did for Marvel, you inked it. And Joe goes, I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. He was just so unassuming, Joe, he could we had Klaus Janson had one of those Christmas benefits at the comic store. And he was very nice to Joe. He walked over, he goes, Joe, it's an honor to meet you. Your body of work is amazing. So these guys really appreciated Joe. And I was happy that I was able to bring him out to get the fanfare, the artists who'd come and talk to him, because he never knew that people knew him. And I took him to Baltimore a few years ago. And we're in the lobby, and Frank Miller's there. And because he's Hollywood, he has the bodyguards around him. So I go to Joe, you should say hi to Frank. And he goes, I can't say hi to Frank Miller. I take Joe's arm and picture, I'm holding his arm, I'm walking towards Frank, and Joe has his head down because he's embarrassed, because he was very shy, Joe. So I go, hey, Frank, the bodyguards, they turn around like I'm going to assassinate him. So I said, calm down. It's Joe Giella. He'd like to say hi. Frank Miller walks over. He puts his arm around Joe, snaps his fingers, and goes, photos. And his bodyguards, they whip out their cell phones, and they're taking shots of them. So then after they finish the photos, he walks Joe over to the corner of the lobby, and they talk for about a minute. And then he walks him back to me. When Joe and I are walking away, I said, what did Frank Miller say? He goes, well, he looked at me and he said, you don't think I know who the blank you are? You're a blanking legend. And Joe was so shocked that he knew. I said, Joe, Frank Miller knows artists. You worked for DC Comics for 45 years. I think he knows you. But Joe was very, And he's another one that really cared about commissions. He always said, if I wouldn't hang it on my wall, it's not going to leave the house. So this idea I had, and it's really large, it's like, I don't know, 24 by 35 or something. I had this idea with all these characters and cat and like Catwoman on the cage and all this stuff. And he did a great job. And it kind of reminded me of like a Dick Sprang sort of a feel to it, like that large collage sort of a thing.
Sure.
But I really liked it. You know, I thought it really captured Joe's style well.
Did he enjoy painting?
Oh, he loved to paint. As a matter of fact, and again, going back to artists getting better, he was practicing on how to do the gray wash or the colors where it literally looked like it was sprayed on. You couldn't see a brush stroke or anything. And he was getting it down, and he would show me. He would say, see, I used to do it like this. Look how much better this comes out. And he was already in his 90s by that time. But he loved to paint. So that was not a problem. He loved to gray wash. So a lot of our commissions that I sold to people, a lot of them, we must have had a 70% retention rate. Like a lot of collectors, when they get a commission, they might get one and then they go. We had a lot of people. We charge very fair prices because I thought at Joe's age, from the 80s to 90s, I didn't want him to have a lot of inventory because that was not going to help him. So I wanted them to sell at a fair price for Joe and a very fair price for the collectors. And we had a lot of them come back for more. And, and getting commissions myself, I thought we always did it really good. I never took anything up front in money. I would tell the collector, when we get to you, I'm going to email you. At that point, you send me the check for the full amount, and upon receipt of the check, Joe begins your work because you are the next one. So it's not like you'll get it in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. They would get it within 3 weeks. And we never had a problem. No one was ever out a penny. And a lot of them, like I said, they came back. But Joe did great work, and he really cared about the commissions. He had that old way about him, like, hey, they're asking me. It's an honor that they're asking me, So I was really proud to rep him. It was an honor. And he was one of the nicest guys I ever met. I loved him like a father. He was a great guy. We'd go to shows, and he really enjoyed the fans coming up to him and talking to him. He was the nicest guy. So that was, again, getting into the artwork. I was really proud to rep him. That's how that Jeremy Roberts that you had on your show once. He's a younger guy, but he's learning, and he's getting a very nice collection. He was very enthusiastic, you said, on your show. He always sends me links. You think that this is, you think that this is good? Should I buy it? And then I would say, well, this is this. I wouldn't buy it, or it's this, So it's always nice, too, to help these newer guys when you've made mistakes, and you can say, wait a minute. Before you jump at this, I've done those sort of things. I would avoid that problem, So he's a very nice guy. I think on your show he called me his mentor, but he's a nice guy. So it's also nice you talk to the high-end guys, but you also talk to newer guys, and it's a nice hobby where the comic books were a little more sterile. You would buy a comic book in good shape, and you put it in your Mylar plastic, and maybe you'd have it graded, and it sits in the box because, that's it. You can't really read it and crease a page or get oil from your fingers on it. So this I really enjoyed much, much more,
I agree. I mean, like I said earlier, that's why we all love it, right? It's
yeah.
You can actually handle it, show it off, share it with your family. You don't share too many comic books with
Right,
your
exactly.
family members, but art you can share. I mean, everybody can understand what a piece of art is and appreciate it, even if they don't get the characters
Exactly
that are on it. That's fine. And hey, Mr. Easy Go Lucky keeps reminding everybody that we that not everyone who's watching the show has given us a thumbs up tonight. But Jeff and I would appreciate it if you would, because it would show us that you're enjoying the show tonight. Because this is great, Jeff. It's a great conversation.
Thanks. Now, if you pull up the Elric piece,
I can do that right here.
Right. Colleen Duran was very nice. I love Elric, and I was thinking of who could do it in a fantasy style, and I thought of Charles Vess, Kaluta, and her. Kaluta is hard to get to now. Charles Vess I hadn't seen, so I saw her at a show, and I walked up to her and I said, would you do a commission? And she goes, yeah. So I said, do you know anything about Elric? And she starts naming the characters, and she goes, when I go on a plane, a lot of times I'll take an Elric book and I'll read it. So I'm thinking this is a home run. So I said, really? And she goes, yeah. So I said, oh, fantastic. So we talked about a piece, and she was going to color it. And as she was working on it in the pencils, I have to admit, I was saying, well, it's good that it's got Cimmeral, his love, but what about the cousin Ikron? If you could put him in the background, the guy in the green. And she's like, I started the drawing and you're asking me for that. I said, I know, but that would really make it good. So I was just killing her, not meaning to, but I was killing her, So, but then she wrote me, and then she sent me a pitch and said, all right, this is how it's going to look. And it looked fantastic. And when she painted it, because I don't go online as much, the guys in my art group, they sent me from her Twitter and Facebook. She said it was the first painting she ever did with the incandescent paints, where they grind these stones up. You can't see it or feel it, of course, but that if you look at it in certain lights, different parts of it light up. And she said on her Facebook and Twitter that it was the best thing she ever did. And when she wrote me the email, she basically said, Jeff, this is the best thing I've ever done. And then of course she said, if I knew it was going to be like this, you'd have paid a lot more money for it. So I thank her, of course. And the funny thing was, the guys in my group, they always kid me. Right after that, she shut down her commissions. So it just happened to work out that she pulled her art and the commissions off, because I think with helping Neil Gaiman, she became like hotter and hotter, and she's very busy. And I think other guys who are doing books are calling her to do some drawings in it. So she kind of had pulled that off her site, except for the patrons. She stopped the commission list right after mine. But she's wrote me a couple of emails since. She had liked this piece. So I have that on the back of her frame too. I save their letters and stuff. Just, it's a nice memory,
Of course.
But if you see it in person, it really, I mean, her dress and everything, it's so like fine and textured. It's really impressive. When I showed Joe at the time, Giella, he said, she's not a comic book artist, she's an illustrator. He said, that's the difference. She's an illustrator. He goes, she's really good. You could just see it, but it's really gorgeous in person, but I was thrilled that she did it. She was very nice about it,
So do you frame most of your work, or
I have about 47 things on the wall, and then I have the rest in the Itoya folders, because I want to see it every day. If I come down into the room, I'd like to see it, or a friend of mine or family. And but now it would have to be, if I bought a piece, it's got to be quote wall worthy. I'd have to take something off the wall, because
you're running out of wall space.
It's not coming upstairs. And my wife's been very, very good about it. She hangs my stuff, because I don't have a good eye for hanging stuff. She's hung everything, and she's been very good as far as, to be fair, there's a lot of guys I speak to where if they're spending money, the wives, they might say, you're spending a good amount. Kathy, I have to say, she's been great. She really never even asked me how much it costs or anything. She'll just say, if you really like it, you had to have it, okay, if you're happy with it, so she's been great about it. So it not going upstairs, it's fine, but I don't blame her, you know. But the room, it's kind of nice because it sets off a room. Instead of thinking of how do we decorate it, this really did it anyway. So it's kind of nice, you know. Then my favorite piece, if you pull up the Alex Ross, the Alfred and the cow,
Mm-hmm.
that's my favorite piece. I love this piece because when they did, it was in issue 686. He did the variant cover, and Kubert did the cover. It was Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader. Neil Gaiman wrote it when Batman dies, and I just thought it was brilliant of Alex Ross to not have to have Batman on the cover, he's bleeding, or it's evident that, okay, he's gone. Alfred's his closest friend. He's hoping an open cowl staring down. You know, that's it. It's over. There's something wrong. And I just thought it was brilliant of him to do that. I didn't realize at the time when I got it that if you look at Wikipedia for Alfred Pennyworth, that's become the photo of it. And I've seen it on some magazines. I've seen it on some other things. So it's become like a well-known piece, but I like it because it's a moment in time. And I just think it really captures a moment where you know that it's something important. And I just thought it was great that he put Alfred on it, his closest friend, and he didn't need to push it in your face.
Right. I mean, Alex, we always think of him. I mean, I always think of him as like kind of this pinup, glitzy artist, but he definitely can capture a mood like nobody else when he sets his mind to it. This is a beautiful piece.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought, and when they had the Batman exhibit in the city at that gallery, they borrowed that one. I remember, but yeah, I just really, I'm a Rembrandt fan, and he does portraits, and I just thought he always tried to capture the person at that moment. And I just love this piece. So that's my favorite piece, I have to say. You know, that piece I'll never sell. But that's, yeah, I really like that piece. I got that at the New York Comic Con from Sal Albinati, his rep.
Sal Albinati,
yeah, I got it there. I remember, and but yeah, I don't know. When I see it, I just think, yeah, okay, that's nice art, really fine, and I don't know, I just think it's great, you know.
Nope, you did very well with that one. Now I have to show the cap piece because we've skipped it over and people are demanding.
Oh yeah,
they've been chanting in the chat for it, and I've kind of been ignoring them.
Oh, sorry.
But we did talk about it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, this piece, like I said, it never got to the quote market. And like I said, Chuck Costas, the Zeck guy, he always says, I would love to own that piece. I never really got to have it or see it, but it's just gorgeous in person. And when I saw it, like I said, I really hadn't collected art yet. And that was a big jump for me, but I just thought that might be the prettiest thing I ever owned. And I like the fact that he was fighting in the real world. It's like the mafia guys. He wasn't fighting a super, monster, a super being. It's regular guys. They're shooting at him. They're in the pinstripe suits. And it was him in the real world. And I just thought that's really a great piece. And, and the only thing that Marvel did is in the left-hand corner, they just put it's Captain America, but the poster's darker because I have the poster, and it didn't do it real. It's darker than what the painting is. And Zimmerman, he did a great job. And the pity is that Zimmerman, over the years, he was such a perfectionist, he just had to quit because he was never happy with some of the things he did, even though they had looked great. So he ended up eventually stopped doing it, and that piece is about 24 by 30 or whatever it is, but that's a really that's really impressive if you see it. And that's why I think George Perez, truthfully, I think he was very impressed because he just stood there like for 5 minutes, and like I said, he was shaking his head like and he just smiled and he thanked us and he walked out. But when I told him I had it, he wanted to come over to my house, which surprised me, but he wanted to see it in person, but I always had really liked Zeck. I remember once I talked to Klaus Janson, and he only inked one book of Zeck. And I remember him saying, inking Zeck was like eating ice cream. And I thought how funny that was. And I said, eating ice cream? He goes, I just had to follow his lines. That's how clean they were. I didn't do anything.
Well, he made an easy job for him, but yeah, these are nice. And I mean, Zimmelman was pretty talented in his own
Yeah.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
these when they worked together, they were fantastic. So yeah, you're pretty fortunate to have this piece. I mean, I assume this is on the wall. You get to see it every day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I used to have it hanging pretty much alone because I didn't have stuff at the time. I got that so early on. It was like, way above the couple of little convention sketches I got. I guess that's what also had made me think, to do the artist justice too. I don't want to get a simple sketch and people think, well, the guy's okay. It's not the artist's fault. I just got a quickie convention sketch. So I thought if I'm going to get a piece, I'd like it to be where I'm happy with it, but also the artist will know, like, oh, okay, it shows off his talent. It did help me. The other thing that helped me, I have to say, when I was getting commissions, were a lot of them would ask me, what do you have? And when I would tell them, that would help me a lot of times, because if I showed them like a photograph or something, or I sent them a scan on email, like they would literally write me back and say, if I'm going to hang on your wall, I better do a good job. And that would like kind of, I guess, prompt them to do a better job, knowing I don't want to be side by side by a good whatever, Gene Colan or Russ Heath or whoever I sent them, or the Silver Surfer. And I know a lot of them said, give me time, because I want to take my time, because if it's going to hang on the wall, I'd rather not be embarrassed, So they were very nice about it. So that actually had helped me. Not that I really planned it, but they would always ask me, well, who else do you have? Because I'd be asking them for like a nicer commission. So I guess they thought, he doesn't want a regular commission. He was like, he really wants a nicer piece. I wonder what he has, I guess, So I would show them, I'd send them a scan or whatever. And, I'd send them a couple of scans, and they would see it and write me back. And, and they would say, well, give me time because I have to step up, or the Severin pieces or whatever,
Right.
But that just kind of fell into place. It wasn't really a plan,
Mm-hmm.
But it was just really nice getting to know a lot of them, and really like getting to know them well, and hearing their stories, and and stories that you just don't hear, and those stories are going to be lost, and it's kind of sad, I had a guy contact me about a year ago. He's thinking of maybe writing a book of behind the scenes, and he asked if I would give him some stories. So I told him, if you do it, call me and we'll see, But he wanted to do a book like of those stories that Bob Kane or this one and that one that people are not going to hear because they're gone. And a lot of people today have never met those guys, they've been long gone. So, but they were very nice, the Shelley Moldorfs, the Gene Colans, and all those people, Then also, like on that, and that's another point that I'll make quick. I think a lot of collectors, like they're sure that so-and-so drew page 5 of issue 10. And I remember when I was speaking to Bob Layton, I'm a good friend of his, and I know that you are too. As a matter of fact, he sends me, he doesn't charge me. He telling you, he's such a nice guy for years. For that comic shop that does that charity drive, he sends me an Iron Man drawing every year for us to raffle it off. That's how nice he is. But I remember pull up the Iron Man page.
Sure.
Since I'm talking about him, I thought this was a great page. I love this page. And if you look further to the right, the last panel, he's the hero.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see it because I see the writing from people writing in, but to the right it shows him standing there as the hero. But on that scene, he has a new case, and he's getting changed, and then the last thing is that typical Marvel thing that he's the hero. And I remember asking him, because a couple of people on CGC said, I don't know if Bingham did it. I think Bingham did it. And I had asked Leighton. And I heard this from Giella too. And he said, Jeff, he goes, we don't remember every page. He goes, deadlines came. The big thing is you would say, if you needed help, draw it in my style. He said that happened a lot. Now, I know from Joe Giella personally, about half of Frank Giacoya's work is his. Now, that's not to put him down or say that Frank, Joe, he would be the first one to say that he was a great inker. And he said how great he was is he said he couldn't hit a deadline. He would go to Marvel, they'd hire him, they'd fire him at some point. He'd go to DC Comics, they'd fire him, and he'd bounce back and forth because he was that good of an inker that you wanted him. But he lived very near Joe, and Joe and Shirley would tell me the stories 2:30 in the morning. And typical Joe, he would call Joe and say, the coffee's on, come over. And Shirley, she's like, Joe, it's 2:30 in the morning. Tell him no. And Joe would go, he needs me. He would go over, and Joe said he was always late on deadlines. So he said, and I'd help him out. So he said about half his work is mine. So he said, but he said Frank Giacoya was a great inker. He said, so that was not a put down. He said he just could not meet a deadline. And just to show you too, on that Fantastic Four, the family portrait, Joe Sinnott signed it, and Stan Lee, of course, signed it, but Joe Sinnott signed it, and that's attributed to Giacoya and Buscema. And I know Sinnott well, and I thought, but he had passed away, and I never thought about it. And I thought he wouldn't have signed that just to sign it. So I brought it to Joe's house, and Joe looked at it, and he goes, sure, he worked on this, and so did Frank. And he's showing me, this is Giacoya, this is Sinnott. He said, that's why he signed it. He said, that's not all Giacoya. He goes, trust me, he was late on the deadline. This is a lot of people, it's a lot of work. He probably did 3/4 of it and said, can somebody help me? And Sinnott, being a nice guy, said, yeah, I'll work on it too, because it's a nice piece. And Sinnott was well aware of the Fantastic Four from Kirby. So Joe had even said, see, this is another piece that people are going to say, oh, Frank Giacoya and Buscema did the whole piece. He said, no, Buscema drew it for sure, the whole piece, but then Sinnott did a little, and Giacoya did most of it, but not all of it. And from Leighton too, it seems like that happens quite often, which I could see that. That's why Michael Zeck, he stopped doing a monthly book. He couldn't meet a deadline, so he started to do covers, which he was fantastic at, posters, he was fantastic at that. Or he would do like a Punisher run, but it would be very specific. I think a lot of guys have trouble because the deadlines are hard. When Joe had Mary Worth for 25 years, he said the deadlines were murderous. So he was doing very good on the commissions and going to shows. So he called me one day and said, Jeff, I'd like to say thanks. I am able to retire from Mary Worth. It's a lot easier to do this. I don't have the deadlines. When they gave it to June Brigman, we saw her at the Baltimore Con, and Joe goes, how's Mary Worth? She holds up a strip and goes, I'll be back working on it at the hotel tonight, because it's one of those things,
Well, that's kind of, you hear that all the time, right? I mean, guys would bring pages back to continuity, and and they would all sit down as a team and get the work done in a single night or over a couple of days. And those same stories held true, during the Image days as well, when people would it's a team effort sometimes when somebody's got a deadline that they can't make. You got to save their butt. And the great thing about the inkers, they're versatile, right? And so they can kind of all get in there, and one guy's doing faces, another guy's doing blacks, another one's doing the street scenes behind them. It just, they'd get in their grooves and get work done, and those are the great things, the stories that we hear that make the hobby all the more fun. I mean, we enjoy the stories when we read the comics, but when you get to hear what it was like working in the trenches to get projects like that done, it means all, makes the artwork all the more special, I think, for all of us.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, and they all become friends, so they're willing to help out each other. Like I have, which is a controversial thing. I have those small. They have them in frames where it was like a little photo, a little drawing of like the heroes or the army guys. They were kind of like stamps back in the early 60s, not the Marvel stamps that came in the 70s. Marie Severin's attributed to doing them all.
Those are like the little square or almost square
exactly.
pieces.
Yeah, and knowing her, she said, I didn't do them all. Now, I know that most people think, no, she did them all. She said Don Heck had helped her out, some other ones, because she said Stanley had asked her to do it. She was doing some, but she was also doing a job. So she said every now and then an artist would come by and say, give me it, I'll help you out. So, and again, I know that it's all attributed to her, but she had even said, I didn't do them all. So, but that was a normal thing. It wasn't anything shocking that people would say, yeah, I'll help you out. But Joe, I know, he knew about Giacoya or Don Heck and all these guys, and they would all chip in and help out, and I think that, Joe and guys like Sinnott, I think they always felt too that they all start out as the pencilers, but they said that because they could ink quicker and the pay wasn't great, and they had side jobs. Like Joe did roofing, stained glass work. He did a lot of stuff. They turned into inkers, and it always bothered them at the time that they thought, a lot of collectors thought, well, he's really an inker. I don't know how his pencils are. And he said that, like him and Murphy Anderson, they would always work on Carmine stuff. And Joe always said Carmine was a great layout guy. He could do great layouts. His pencil work was loose. And he said that him and Murphy would have to kind of erase it and kind of make it look better. And he said that Julie Swartz would always say, don't do it when he's around, he'll get mad. And he said that Carmine would come into the room late and go, are those my faces? That's the only thing he ever asked them. And they would say, yeah, okay. Really. And he said he was a great layout guy. He said, but his pencils were really loose. So when I asked Carmine to do the 2 commissions I have from him, I could tell when he drew them, I'm like, oh my God. And he goes, Joe knows how I like it. And I thought, sure, you're going to let him do it. And when I gave it to Joe, he goes, it brings me back. Goes, get the erasers, Shirley, get the erasers, So it's funny, because, he knows that, but they were all such nice people. They were very nice, I have to say. And they all did a great job. I don't know. I think we might have gone through all the pieces. Oh,
no, there is one more, but before we even get to that one, what's on the back wall? I'm going to make you go full screen, and you don't have to move your camera around, but I'm just curious. I see that Doom piece. That's
right. That's the Joe Sinnott. He sent that to me for a Christmas present.
Well, that's one heck of a Christmas present.
Yeah,
I was going to say it was. I thought maybe it was John, but it makes sense that it was Joe.
Yeah, Joe Sinnott, he sent me that, and on the back of that, which I didn't even know at the time, he had done a sketchbook. There's a sketchbook on the back. He wrote me a letter. He had beautiful handwriting, boy, beautiful. And he wrote me a letter apologizing that he could only do that. And then I called him up and I'm like, you kidding me, right? And he wouldn't take anything from me. He had a lot of the medical issues and had some jobs at hospitals. So he would tell me his problem. I would go in and ask the doctor and call him back and give him the, the information. So he liked that. So we got along well, and he was a baseball fan. So we talked about baseball, but Yeah, he sent me that, and that was very nice. That's the Shelley Moldorf Green Lantern.
I
The
see the
one above, the
Ronin
one
piece is
above,
up there, right?
huh?
I see the Ronin piece.
Yeah, the Ronin piece. Let me see if I
What's that
move.
Spidey piece?
Yeah, that's a Sal Buscema.
Ah,
That's a Spider-Man piece that, again, it's one of those pages where it shows him with the Fantastic Four, it shows him with this and that. So it's got like a little history of how he was through the years. So I got that page because, again, I thought instead of just an interior page that just had Spider-Man or whatever, it kind of gave you a little bit of history with it.
sure.
You
And that
know,
answers somebody was asking earlier if you had anything by Sal, so that addresses that question.
well, and they also have a Fantastic Four page by Sal. It's a splash page. It's the pursuit page where it shows Ben Grimm is getting out of a cab, and they were looking for the Invisible Woman. She's standing there, and Johnny Storm's flying above, and Reed Richards is there stretching. It was a splash page, so I have that from Sal. So I have two things from him. Yeah, but I had a hard time thinking of what I was going to show because I'm thinking, do I show this? Do I show this? So I just did the best job I could. The one above the Senate piece, you can see a little bit of it, but you know, above the Joe Sinnott piece, that was a recreation when he hired Murphy Anderson to do like 30 covers. That was Steve Geppi,
Yeah.
and he hired him. Well, that piece was sold on Heritage, and I remember I bought it, and a couple of days later, his vice president called me, and he goes, "You bought the piece?" And I said, "How do you know I bought the piece?" And he goes, "Well, I called Heritage, and they told me." I said, "Yeah." So he goes, "Well, he wants it back." So I said, "Well, I bought it. I wanted the piece. I didn't steal the piece. I bought the piece." So he goes, "Well, Geppi, he wants it back. That's one of his covers that he really likes. He didn't really want to sell it." So I said, "Well, I really like it, and I plan on keeping it. It's nothing personal." So Geppi was a partial owner of the Baltimore Orioles, and he goes, he would invite you and your wife Kathy to Baltimore and sit in a skybox with him. And I wasn't going to take advantage and do that and sit in his box and be treated and then say no, no at the end, because that's lousy to do. So I just said, "Listen, I thank you for the offer, but it's mine and I'm not selling it." So that was that. And he said, "If I ever sell it, to call him first." I said, "Yeah, okay, fine." But I've had a lot of I'm telling you, I've had a lot of these stories where I don't know, just things just happen. But that was odd, because I was surprised that he called them and they gave him my number. He's calling me on the phone. I thought that was kind of weird.
That is pretty weird.
Yeah,
Most,
it is weird, and it put me
I
in
don't
a
think that
funny
would happen
spot.
too often.
Yeah, and it put me in a funny spot because I didn't want to seem mean, but I bid on the piece. I won it because I wanted the piece. It's the first time that the Justice Society met on that cover. That's a famous cover. Now, obviously, the original. I don't know where that is, if it's still around. But I thought, Murphy Anderson's an old time artist, so he could do a good job, and it's a well known cover, so I wanted it. But it pressured me at the time when the guy called me, because he kept on pushing, But what could
Well,
I do? I
you
wanted
stuck
the piece.
to your guns and you kept it. I don't blame
Yeah,
you.
you know. But I didn't want to go to Baltimore and have him treat us and then say no. So I was honest. I said, "Listen, I'm not doing that. But if you want to show the Bernie Wrightson piece, I love Bernie Wrightson. Um, I thought that was a really nice piece. That was the portfolio cover from Chanting Monk Press. It was Gardens of the Dead. And I'm never going to own a Frankenstein page, but I thought this was a good example of his work. I do have a couple of pencil pieces of his that are very nice. He did Toe Tags #2 by Romero, It's got all these zombies on it,
Oh, yeah.
and he sprayed it so that it didn't smudge. And I would sit at his booth a lot of times. And one time I brought it there, and since it wasn't colored, behind it, it had like this space, this white space. So I asked him if he could do something. So he like drew trees at the show, and it filled it up nice, you know. But this piece I had really liked. I thought this was a good example of his work. You know, a typical zombie, and he's got the stairs and the foliage. I just think he's a great artist, you know. So I was happy to get that piece.
And what's the size on this one?
That's larger than.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I don't know, maybe 12 by 18 or more. I don't know, but that's a pretty large piece.
Gorgeous.
You know, but it's really nice though in person, because like you see all the trees and the shrubs and the zombie and the lantern on the brickwork, and I just thought, you know, that's a good piece, because I have 2 pencil pieces, but I like his inking, of course. So I thought, ooh, that would be a nice piece to have. So I bought that one, you know.
So is Bernie somebody you got to see at shows quite often?
Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah, and I sit behind his booth a lot. You know, yeah, he was very nice and humble, very humble. You know, I tell him you're a great artist, and he's like, you think so? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. I said, you're fantastic. You know, you kidding me? You know, yeah, he was great. You know, I think guys like, well, he was, to me, I would put him, you know, right up at the top. But guys like Buscema was very good, in those guys. You know, just certain guys, you just have that look to it. You know, but I just think that he was just really talented.
No, he was. He really, really was. And you're right. I think that was the last piece that you sent me. You know, we're gonna have to do this again, where you give me another set of 20 to go through.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and like I have things like from Jerry Robinson, and I know he had a rep for a while. Keith Fromm repped him, I think, for a little while.
He did, yeah.
And I remember I showed him a scan once, and I remember Keith Fromm saying, I never saw him do that before. I was very fortunate. I got guys to do things that they really wouldn't do, because he was known for drawing like a half a Joker face. Or if he did a Batman Robin, he'd have them on the bottom right of a page at their waist, and the whole page is blank, but he'd have them like coming out of the bottom. And I had him do a piece where it's Batman and Robin, and he did draw them small, but it's full figured, but in the background it's all buildings and everything, which you never see him do a background. And on the Joker, I had him do the 2 playing cards of Batman and Robin, and then he crayoned them. He colored them in crayon, and then he put the ha ha ha, but it's a full face right in the middle of the page. So when I showed Keith, he's like, I never saw him do that before, you know. And David Lloyd, who usually does a crayon of V for Vendetta, he was very nice guy. I got 2 things from him where he inked and gray washed the scene for me, which he doesn't really do. And he was so nice that at one of the New York Comic Cons, it was the second piece I got from him. He put it in a cylinder, and he told me before the show, he goes, when you come to the show to my booth, I'm just going to hand you the cylinder. Please don't take it out until you get home, because I don't want fans to ask me for it, and I'm not going to do it. And I don't want to hurt their feelings, because he was a nice guy. He didn't want to say no. So I took the cylinder from him, and I went home and I opened it up at home, you know.
Did you keep the cylinder?
What?
Did you keep the cylinder?
No, because there was nothing special about the cylinder.
No, you couldn't hang that on the wall, put it in a display case or something.
No, and when my wife and I had gone to London, he met us for lunch. We had lunch, we hung out and talked and everything. He's a nice guy, nice man, you know. So yeah, I got to know really a lot of them. Like it was very nice on more of a personal thing. So
Hmm.
we might talk about politics, we might talk about sports a lot. It just wasn't about the artwork, you know. But when they drew something for me, I was very fortunate, you know, because when I got the pieces and I would show it, you know, because some guys in my art group, they're high end guys, you know, and I felt good because like they would say, you know, that's a hell of a piece, you know, that's a hell of a commission, boy, you got good commissions, you know. So I'm happy I did that, but I should have bought the published work sooner, but I couldn't get past the aesthetics because I was going to frame them, and I thought that's not going to look good in a frame, and they weren't selling the artwork back then. It wasn't a big thing at shows, you know. It was the comic books that was the big thing.
Hmm.
You didn't even see a lot of artists drawing at shows, you know. So, you know, I really didn't think about it much. So I thought about the drawings, you know, but then over the years, you finally realize, gee, it might be nice if I have some published pieces. But by then, the prices were slowly starting to go up, and then they, skyrocketed, um, you know, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy from the guys who I got it from. I never met Jack Kirby. He's one of the guys who I'd like to have met. I never had met him. But a lot of guys that I had dreamed about meeting, I did meet. And it was nice again that instead of collecting comic books and seeing their name on the page, you got to meet them and they drew something and their hand was on the page you have from them. It was really personal. So I really had liked that, you know. I just thought that was really nice, you know. But I have a painting from Sienkiewicz, Kaluta, you know. I have a lot of stuff, but that's why I had a hard time. I thought it was going to be easy when you emailed me and said send me some stuff. I thought, oh, it's a no-brainer. And then when I was going through it, I'm thinking, should I send this one? And I said, no, this one, you know, and you know, so I did the best I could. Of course, the guys in my group, are you giving him this one? I said, you're just killing me here. Said, you know, just leave me alone, you know. So you know, but I love you know, I love the hobby. I like the fact that you're having your special show in January. We're flying down for it. There's a bunch of guys from our group going too. Um, you know,
Yeah,
so it should be fun.
I haven't been following all the ticket sales, but I know I think Rich Cirillo's coming, so
Oh,
that's awesome. Yeah,
Robert Frey,
Robert
Rich
Frank. Yeah.
Carrillo. There's a Robert Lee, but not the Robert Lee who sells a lot of stuff. He's a different guy who is on your site. He has some nice stuff too. He has good taste. He's coming also. He's bringing his wife. So there's a bunch of us going. There's a guy Lou. He's a big Miller fan and Stalin and that. So he's coming too. So there's a lot of us coming.
Well, I like to hear that. I mean, it's going to
We
be.
are supporting you.
I appreciate it.
We're
Well,
supporting you.
a lot of people wanted me to do a show in New York, but you know, I felt like doing
Yeah.
something in the middle of winter in Florida was at least a good first step for us.
I like that idea.
Yeah. So
And New York, you know, I don't know, you know, and I think they haven't recovered from COVID even, you know, it's a little choppy. So, you know, they've had a lot of problems there because, of course, you know, I live on Long Island and you hear a lot of stories in the city. They're having a lot of problems, you know, and I think you're right. I think Orlando in January, it should be perfect, you know.
right, and you know, we're trying to attract artists as well, and you know, I
Right,
mean, artists go to New York quite a bit, and so you know, you got to think about, you know, where would they like to spend a few extra days too if they were going to come
right.
down to our shows. So, so Orlando made a lot of sense to us. But yeah, it's good. It's going to be great. I mean, we've got a lot more work to do, you know, going into all this, but we have 6 more months to get a few things done, and it's going to be an experience. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, I have a feeling a lot of guys are going to come back. They'll spread the word that, oh, especially on Friday night, they're meeting the artists, the high end guys, the moderate guys. They got to meet a lot of people at network. I think a lot of collectors are going to come back and talk about that show. And the following year, I think you'll get people who are thinking, do I fly down, get a hotel? I don't know how the show is going to be. And I think it will give them the confidence to say, that's a show that I should go to.
I agree.
That's
I
what I
think
think will happen for you, you know?
And we have
for sure.
definitely a lot of fun things planned for it too. I mean, there's because we've got a few things we'll be giving away as part of
Right.
just the tickets and stuff, and things that I think are going to make people very, happy to be there. And it's stuff that
Oh, I'm
people are going
sure.
to talk about. That's the thing. So, and that's what I want. I mean, it's not worth doing if you're not going to do it right and make it
Right.
memorable. So,
Right. And I think a smaller crowd's fantastic,
mhm.
because that's always a big complaint that by the time you get into the show, the guy's list is full or there's a line of 100 people, so a smaller crowd with good artists, you have a good shot at getting to a lot of them. So so that's a big plus you
Oh
have
yeah,
going
and
for you.
and we've got mostly, a lot of the bigger dealers are going to be coming down too. Karen, I
Right.
even Berkey's bringing all of his inventory.
I'm
Anthony will
sure.
be there. Some dealers who don't make it out to any shows are coming to this one. So it's
Right.
definitely going to be different than the more vintage shows like Comic Art Con or Bashar's shows on the West Coast. So yeah, it'll definitely have a different flair to it than anything that I think that we've gotten a chance to see before. But I appreciate you being behind it, Jeff, and the support you've given me via email talking about it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great show. And I think, too, some of your artists who can't draw at a regular show because the lines are just ridiculous, they may be able to say, you know what, if there was one show that I might draw, I don't have a line of 150 people. I might do a couple, 4 or 5 or 3 or whatever. And that would also lead for people to come home and tell their friend, you'll never guess, you can't get a drawing from so-and-so, but I got one. So,
Exactly.
I think you have a lot of stuff going for you at that show. I really do.
My fingers are crossed.
I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your confidence in what we're pulling together here. But yeah, so clearly we're going to have you back on, Jeff. This was a lot of fun, and I know there's
Thanks.
you just mentioned Sienkiewicz, Kaluta. There's a lot more art that we can be looking
Oh, yeah.
at. I'd love to see a better image of the Sinet FF Doom piece behind your shoulder. So yeah, I mean all those things.
Wait, can I pull this off the wall?
Don't damage anything.
Let me see. Now, I am the worst at this, so I will try to do it where you could see it. Wait.
Oh, that is. Oh, look at that. See, I couldn't. Oh my God, look at that. Holy mackerel. I've got a Sinet FF piece too, where it's they're kind of like
Right.
shoulder up, all 4 characters in pencil by
Right.
Joe. He was amazing.
See, and then on the back of it, I have a lot of this stuff.
Ah, wow.
Letters, sketchbook, Christmas cards. I have a lot of that stuff on a lot of my pieces behind the frames, because a lot of them would send me letters, or they'd send me if they were on a trip, and they'd send me like, hey, I'm down in so and so, and how's it going, Jeff. So behind my frames, I have a lot of stuff. And I have a Bill Ward piece, which isn't really my normal thing.
Mm-hmm.
I met him early on, and he did a nice color piece. And on the back of it, he's telling me he'd like it in a blue matte in a certain way. And Black Hawk and Torchy, he wanted them to be intimate, but it took him a little time. And then he threw in that chop guy in the corner. I mean, and that's a piece that I would show the next time, because that's a piece, again, like I've looked at a lot of Ward pieces. I've never seen anything quite like that one. But that's an odd one for me. That's an odd one for me. I just saw him at the show, and it's funny because at the time it's painted and everything. He goes, $80. I said, all right. Now, I didn't know that was a good price, a bad price,
Right, of course.
because that was early on, and I said, yeah, okay, fine. And he put it on his letterhead in the back of the frame, and it's got the sexy girls around his thing, because that's his thing, So I have a lot of like, a personal thing from them, So, and I kept it because I thought it's nice to have that on the back of the frame, so that I could look at it and say, gee, it was nice for them to do that, but You know, that's why the published pieces, I love them and stuff like that. But some of the commissions, I have to admit, I value them in my head as much as those,
Right. Well, you
because
get a
of that
different
connection.
attachment to those. That's for, if you're buying a published page, you just have the memory of reading the book, and that's really special too. I mean, that's part of
Right.
the nostalgia
Yeah.
drives us as collectors a
Right.
great deal. But it's a different connection to the artist than when you're commissioning them, and the thought that you're them sitting at a drawing board working on your on a concept that you've kind of pitched them on is very different. Yeah, in the and like you just said, you're saving every scrap of conversation that you have, or that's tied to those pieces too, which
Right.
makes them all the more special. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like that on
Yeah.
the channel before.
And have a very nice have some very unique things, and Steranko, I have a very nice Steranko.
See, you gotta stop. We're gonna look at all this, and don't, you're teasing everybody now. We don't want to we don't want to give it all away. We're gonna see a Sienkiewicz, Steranko, and Kaluta.
Yeah, Kaluta. Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot. Yeah. I have a nice Johnny Craig. That was weird. I got a pencil piece from I forget the guy's name. He's a big collector of that EC stuff, and Johnny Craig, I forget his name, but he's known, and he sent me a certificate of authenticity. But later on, I was with Joe in Denver, and this older guy's walking around. He's got a folder, and I asked him, "Oh, what's in it?" And he said, "Oh, I'm selling some stuff at my age, And he pulls out a piece, and it's the painting of the pencil piece I had, because he would pencil it, and then he would eventually maybe finish it with another painting and really do it better. And when he pulled it out, I'm like, oh my God, that's the piece I have. So I had to buy it. I'm like, is that for sale? And he goes, yes. So I bought it. So I have the pencil piece and the finished piece of it. So that piece I have too, Yeah.
Well, then we have a lot to look at in the next show. This could be we could have a trilogy, I think, when it's all
trilogy, a trilogy. But like I said, I just really wanted to have a collection that it wasn't going to be the best collection in the world, but enough things that a lot of people would say that would be a nice piece to have, and I thought that was a realistic goal, So that's what I shot for,
Well, you hit the mark, I'd say, Jeff.
Thanks. I tried. I'm telling you, I tried, and I'm still looking. Still looking for stuff. But but I thank you though for inviting me on the show.
Well, it was a pleasure. I think everybody enjoyed every minute of it, and we'll definitely have you back. I mean, we'll float some days your way, maybe even in September or something. Maybe we could have you back on here. I think I'm kind of booked up till about then.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, that'd be great, Jeff. And so everybody, I clearly you enjoyed the show. We know you did, and yet we've only seen a fraction of what Jeff has in his collection. So it'll be a lot of fun to have him back. But thank you so much for doing this, Jeff. It was great fun.
I thank you.
I can't wait to do it again.
Thanks a lot.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back at it tomorrow night with Mike and Anthony. I don't know what we're going to be doing for Dueling Dealers after San Diego, but we'll be doing something. So we'll be hanging out for that. But thank you again, Jeff.